If you have walked the neon-drenched streets of Tokyo or Osaka any time in the last year, you know how inescapable the screens. They are on the sides of monolithic skyscrapers. They line the interiors of the endlessly moving commuter trains. They glow in the palms of millions of hands. And if you happen to glance at one of those screens recently, there is a very high probability you saw her face. You might have assumed she was a rising pop idol, an actress promoting a new drama, or a viral sensation. But her presence on those screens had nothing to do with entertainment. It had to do with blood. It had to do with one of the most violently polarizing, psychologically complex, and publicly broadcast tragedies to strike the nation in recent memory. An event that tore a jagged, permanent scar across the internet in March of 2025. Because the climax of this nightmare wasn't hidden in the shadows. It was live-streamed directly into the retinas of thousands of people. Her name was Ai Soto. To her legions of devoted followers, however, she was known exclusively by her digital moniker, I'm Ogamiyo. It was a name she borrowed from a famous voice actress, a shiny, artificial persona crafted for the platform Fu Wa Sekai TVVV. Ai was 22 years old, and she had conquered the digital landscape. She was famous for high-level gaming, and she didn't offer profound commentary. Her currency was something far more intoxicating, the illusion of intimacy. She possessed an uncanny, predatory charm. She knew precisely how to look into a webcam and make a only viewer feel like they were the center of the universe. She commanded a Platinum Plus badge on the platform, an elite status that marked her as one of the apex predators of the live streaming ecosystem. When you looked at her background, her ascent seemed like a triumph. Ai grew up in the cold, institutional halls of a children's home. She was completely estranged from whatever family she had there to. By the time she was 15, she was entirely on her own, navigating the world with only a basic education and her wits. But the glowing screen of Fu Wa Sekai EV only told half the story. When the stream ended and the ring light clicked off, Ai lived a parallel life in Yamagata City. While sanitized reports later claimed she worked at a local restaurant, the reality of the Japanese nightlife district is far darker. Ai was a hostess in a kabakura, a cabaret club. These are dimly lit, velvet-lined establishments where men, hollowed out by the crushing pressure of corporate life, pay astronomical sums of cash just to sit next to beautiful women. They pay for poor drinks, lit cigarettes, and the desperate, fleeting pretense that these women actually care about them. For a young, ambitious hostess like Ai, the club was merely a hunting ground. It is an open secret in these neon districts that many hostesses engage in what is known as papakatsu, sugar daddy hunting. They identify the most desperate, the most isolated men, and they bleed them dry. These men are typically salarymen, starving for a shred of human warmth. They form intense, entirely one-sided parasocial relationships with these women. They empty their savings accounts, buying expensive gifts and handing over thick envelopes of cash, all in exchange for a few hours of plastic companionship. It is a transactional affection, and it destroys the men who cannot afford it, yet feel so profoundly lonely that they cannot afford to stop. But a question naturally arises: if Ai was a Platinum Plus streamer, adored by thousands, why was she still subjecting herself to the grueling, late-night grind of a cabaret club? The moth didn't add up. Fu Wa Sekai TV, while popular, was not a mainstream behemoth. Experts estimate she was likely pulling in around 300,000 to 400,000 yen a month from her broadcasts, roughly to $3,000. It was a living wage, but it was not wealth. Furthermore, she was navigating the world as a single mother. But there was a darker leak in her finances, a bottomless pit that consumed every yen she earned. Digital footprints and underworld whispers reveal that Ai was possessed by severe addictions. She was a compulsive gambler, obsessed with high-stakes poker, because live poker rooms are strictly illegal in Japan. Fueling this addiction required massive capital to travel to overseas casinos. Even more ironically, she was afflicted by the very same sickness she exploited in her clients. Ai was reportedly a choice Yugurui, a host fanatico. She would take the cash she wrung from the desperate men at her cabaret club, and on her nights off, she would walk into the male host clubs. There, she would sit on the velvet couches, completely mesmerized by the handsome, manipulative men pour in her drinks, blowing through hundreds of thousands of yen in a single evening on towering displays of champagne. The donations from her viewers were a drop in the ocean of her lifestyle. She needed more. She needed a mark. Enter Kenichi Takano. The year was 2021. I was 18 years old, fresh, vibrant, and razor sharp. Kenichi was 39. Kenichi was a ghost of a man. He had no career trajectory. He had no family to speak of. He was a self-described hikomiaki, a recluse. A man who had retreated from the crushing expectations of Japanese society into the dark, silent corners of his own existence. His sense of self-worth was practically non-existent. When Kenichi walked into that cabaret club and there, I turned her massive, attentive eyes toward him. The trap snapped shut instantly. The manufactured attention she showered upon him acted like a narcotic. He was hopelessly, helplessly smitten. Kenichi began making long, exhausting pilgrimages all the way from Ayama just to sit in her presence. He had built the ultimate parasocial relationship, pulling the digital fantasy into the physical world. To Kenichi, this was the romance of a lifetime. To I, he was a walking, breathing ATM. She played him like a finely tuned instrument. Through a relentless barrage of text messages, she would slowly turn the screws of his anxiety. She would type, "I don't think I can make my rent this month." A few days later, "My phone is going to be disconnected." Then, the stakes would escalate. "I have medical bills," she would write, followed by the terrifying, manipulative lie, "I've been vomiting blood. Please, can I borrow something?" It was a labyrinth of deception. But Kenichi, blinded by a desperate need to be her savior, capitulated every single time. If he ever dared to hesitate, if he ever gently asked where the hundreds of thousands of yen he was sending her every month were going, the trap would tighten. She would instantly pivot from the victim to the aggressor. She would bombard him with guilt. And if he still refused to open his wallet, she deployed the ultimate weapon. She threatened to end her own life. Over the agonizing span of 2 years, this isolated, unemployed man funneled more than 2.5 million yen to the young streamer. Over $17,000. But Kenichi did not have this money. He was not a wealthy businessman. To keep the illusion alive, to keep his digital goddess happy, he walked into the offices of predatory consumer lending companies. He signed his life away. He took out loan after loan, watching the interest compound into a suffocating mountain of debt. I knew exactly what he was doing. She watched him slide down the razor blade of financial ruin, and instead of stopping him, she pushed him harder. She coached him. She taught him how to falsify his financial paperwork to secure even more loans from the creditors, whispering sweet, venomous promises of love through the phone to keep him compliant. Kenichi clung to the belief that he was an investor in her life. He believed he was lending her these funds, saving the texts where she promised to reimburse him. But I never saw a loan. She saw tribute. Eventually, the house of cards collapsed. Kenichi, hounded by relentless debt collectors, his life completely shattered, sent a desperate message. He needed the money back. Just some of it. Anything. I deployed her usual excuses. But Kenichi, driven mad by the stress, pushed back harder. He demanded it. So, she simply vanished. She blocked his number. She erased him from her digital universe. The silence was deafening. The realization of his absolute foolishness crashed down on Kenichi. He had been gutted. Refusing to simply fade away, Kenichi took the only avenue he thought he had left. He hired a lawyer and dragged the famous Mogami to civil court. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was silent. I never bothered to show up. By default, the judge slammed the gavel down in Kenichi's favor. It was December of 2023. The court officially ordered Sato to repay every single yen she had extracted from the man, slapped with a 3% annual interest penalty. Legally, it was a victory. Practically, it was meaningless. In the real world, a civil judgment is only a piece of paper if the system refuses to enforce it, and nobody was going to force I to pay. Imagine the psychological torture Kenichi endured in the months that followed. He was trapped in his miserable apartment, the phone ringing constantly with the aggressive threats of debt collectors. And to torture himself, he would open his laptop. He would tune into Fu WASIC, ITVV. There she was, radiant, smiling, chatting with thousands of adoring fans. And then he listened as she brought up the lawsuit. He watched the woman who had ruined his life openly mock him to a live audience, laughing about the judgment like it was a hilarious inside joke. Through these streams, the final, agonizing pieces of the puzzle fell into place for Kenichi. He learned that Era was not struggling. She was engaged to a wealthy man. She was broadcasting from a pristine, luxury high-rise apartment in the heart of downtown Tokyo. His mind began to fracture. He sent a frantic, pathetic message to one of his few remaining friends. Why do I have to go through this? It's my fault for falling in love and being deceived. On March 7th, 2025, Kenichi typed out one final, desperate plea to the woman he had bankrolled. He didn't ask for the 200 million yen. He begged her to simply return 10,000 yen, barely $70, just enough to breathe. The message remained unread. He was still a ghost to her. The embarrassment burned away. The sorrow evaporated. What was left in the hollow shell of Kenichi Takano was a cold, absolute, and unyielding rage. March 11th, 2025. Kenichi opened his laptop. Eri was live. She was participating in a scheduled, outdoor streaming event, casually walking the sprawling perimeter of the Yamanote Transit line, holding her camera up, engaging with heart shut. Kenichi watched the background behind her. He recognized the streets. He stood up, left his home in Oyama, and boarded a train. He was hunting. He stalked her digital shadow through the bustling arteries of the city. He tracked her physical movements until he finally cornered her in the relatively quiet, unassuming neighborhood of Tokoda no Baba. The time was just before 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun was shining. Over 6,500 people were watching Eri's live stream from their offices, their bedrooms, their morning commutes. Then, the viewers noticed a shift. Eri, mid-sentence, glanced off camera. The bubbly, manufactured smile vanished from her face. It was replaced by a look of profound, primal concern. Before anyone could type a question mark in the chat, Kenichi Takano lunged into the frame. He wasn't there to talk. He didn't demand his money. His hand gripped the heavy handle of a steel survival knife. The next 60 seconds would traumatize thousands of people for the rest of their lives. Kenichi drove the blade into her face, her neck, her stomach. Over 30 times. The sheer violence of the impact knocked the smartphone out of her hand. It clattered against the asphalt, the lens facing the sky, the screen plunging into a chaotic blur before settling into darkness. But the microphone was still live. For an entire minute, the digital audience sat paralyzed, listening to the agonizing, wet sounds of the slaughter. They heard the dull thud of Kenichi's boots kicking her. They heard the terrifying, tearing sounds of the steel piercing her flesh. They heard Eri Soto screaming, crying, begging for someone to help her. And then the audio feed fell dead silent. In the chat, absolute pandemonium erupted. People frantically debated if it was a prank, a sick piece of performance art, a staged stunt for views. The debate was settled seconds later. A hand reached down and picked up the fallen smartphone. The lens wiped clean, revealing the face of Kenichi Takano. He stared directly into the eyes of 6,500 people. His expression was a terrifying void. As a friend would later describe it, the human light behind his eyes had been completely extinguished. He held the camera steady, aiming it at his own blank face. His voice was utterly devoid of adrenaline or panic. It was dead. Cold. He looked down, off camera, and asked a single question: "Are you still alive?" He then rotated the lens, panning the camera down to the blood-soaked pavement, broadcasting the mangled, lifeless body of Eri Soto to the world. She was not. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing deafening until the police descended upon the quiet street of Tokoda no Baba just 5 minutes later. They found Kenichi standing over the body. He didn't run. He didn't resist. Initially, his demeanor was so bizarrely calm that responding officers thought He was a good Samaritan who had stumbled upon the horrifying scene. But, as they approached, the 42-year-old simply held out his blood-stained hands and confessed. He calmly explained the financial ruin, the deceit, the mockery. Sitting in the cold interrogation room later that day, he told detectives, "I thought that if I caused an incident, the world would know what Miss Sato had done to me." He is currently locked in a psychiatric facility, undergoing rigorous evaluations to determine if he is legally sane enough to stand trial. His defense team is heavily leaning on a diagnosis of severe schizophrenia, attempting to paint the slaughter as a break from reality. In a bizarre, dystopian twist, when the news of the live-streamed murder first broke, the internet misunderstood the victim's name. They thought Ai Mogami, the famous voice actress Ai had named herself after, had been butchered. The actress's social media accounts were instantly paralyzed by an avalanche of digital mourning, forcing her agency to issue a surreal press release confirming she was still drawing breath. But the true aftermath of this tragedy has been the chilling reaction of the Japanese public. If you dive into the forums and social media threads discussing this case, you will find a deeply unsettling consensus. A massive, vocal majority of the internet sympathizes with the killer. They look at the timeline. They argue that Kanichi played by the rules. He sought legal recourse. He begged for help. He won his court case. And he was spit on by a system that allowed a manipulator to exploit his vulnerability without consequence. They view Ai as a predator who pushed a broken man to the absolute brink, making light of his destruction while living in luxury. This anger has manifested physically. Vigilantes have gone to Tokata no Baba and violently stomped on the floral memorials laid at the scene of her death. It is easy to let the narrative of the scorned underdog cloud our judgment, but we must ground ourselves in reality. Kenichi Takano was a 42-year-old man. He possessed agency. He made a conscious, repeated decision to walk into a club designed entirely around the commodification of fake intimacy. He chose to sign his name on those loaned documents. He chose to ignore the blaring, crimson red flags. Ai Sato was a manipulator. She was a liar. She identified a crack in the system and she exploited it mercilessly. She deserved to face the crushing weight of legal consequences. She perhaps deserved to sit in a concrete cell for financial fraud. But civil society only exists because we agree on a fundamental limit to our vengeance. Murder is not justice. It is not an equalizer. It is a brutal, irreversible act of annihilation. Ai Sato did not deserve to be butchered like an animal on a sunny street. Her agonizing final gasps recorded and uploaded to the internet for eternity. The legal system failed to hold her accountable, yes, but Kanichi Takano failed his own humanity in a far more catastrophic way. He allowed the darkness to consume him, and in that 1 minute of blinding rage, he deprived a young child of their mother. He obliterated Ai's life, and he guaranteed that he will rot in a cage for the rest of his miserable days. Navigating the darkness of these stories requires a certain kind of endurance. It requires flexibility. Making these podcasts means my schedule is entirely unpredictable. Some nights I am awake at 3 a.m, digging through police reports. Other days, I am recording from sunrise to sunset. Managing my own time, my own space, is the only way I survive it. That is exactly why I rely on today's sponsor, Stamps.com. When you are deep down a rabbit hole, the last thing you want to do is break your concentration to stand in a bleak, fluorescent lit line at the post office. Stamps.com is an online post office that lives entirely on your heart, doctored entirely on your heart, doctor. Whether you need to mail out certified documents, business invoices, or ship heavy packages, you can do it without ever leaving your desk. All you need is a computer and a standard printer. They even send you a free, high-precision digital scale to ensure you are perfectly calibrated from day one. Convenience is the lifeblood of this service. If you sell merchandise online, Stamps.com seamlessly integrates with every major marketplace algorithm. You can schedule package pickups directly from your phone. But the true power is the algorithm they use to save you money. Their rate advisor scans the network in milliseconds, securing deals you will not find anywhere else, slashing up to 88% off standard asks and upgrades. Take back your time. Take back your flexibility. Navigate to Stamps.com LazyMasquerade right now for a special offer. You will receive a 4-week trial, entirely free postage, and that digital scale I mentioned. There are no contracts, no long-term commitments, just freedom. That is dumps. Calm, LazyMasquerade. Let's step back into the dark. YouTube Bizzle Leviathan. Billions of hours of video have been uploaded to its server since its inception, and because of the sheer, incomprehensible volume of this digital ocean, it is an absolute mathematical certainty that true nightmares slip through the algorithmic cracks. They sit at the bottom of the data stream, gathering digital dust, witnessed by almost no one. There is a community dedicated to dredging this ocean floor. It is a subreddit known as our Deep into YouTube. It is a place where users share the most bizarre, unsettling, and historically terrifying fragments they can unearth. While scrolling through the archives of this community, I stopped dead on a post by a user named Heart Was Here. The title was unassuming, but the description was a hook in the jaw. The user explained that they had stumbled across a piece of uploaded media from the 1990 seconds. The video depicted two Russian men, wrapped in heavy winter gear, walking up to a snow-covered truck bed. Inside, they found a pile of frozen human corpses. The user noted the video was related to an abandoned settlement called YLTYN, and that it's at a mere 3,000 views. The video itself was titled simply 40 to 40 to 40 to 40 to 42. It had been uploaded to a Baron channel named Yelton back in 2007. For 17 years, this clip had existed in a state of suspended animation. However, when I clicked the link, I noticed the view count had surged to nearly 50,000. A quick search revealed that another creator had recently highlighted it. So while it is no longer a totally buried secret, it remains one of the most chilling, historically vital time capsules on the internet. The video opens with a stark, silent title card written in Cyrillic. Translated, it reads, Tragedy, IL10. Editor, Alex. What happens next is an exercise in auditory isolation. There is no swelling musical score. There is no frantic narration. There is only the biting, violent howl of the wind and the crunch of boots on dry snow. A man holding a handheld camera steps up onto the metal bed of a heavy industrial truck. He reaches down with thick, gloved hands and grabs the edge of a frozen, stiff blanket. He pulls it back. Beneath the top are the bodies of three, perhaps for human beings. They are frozen solid, their skin a pallid, horrifying grey, their forms locked in the rigid agony of hypothermia. The camera lingers on them for just a few seconds, cold and unblinking. Then, the screen cuts to black. A final title card appears. This is how Yelton died. To understand what you are looking at in that truck bed, you have to understand the geography of despair. A brief dive into historical archives reveals that YLTYN, often spelled EOL10 or IULTN, was a Soviet mining settlement located in the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug, in the extreme, unforgiving northeast of Russia. It was a place born in blood, founded in 1937 by the slave labor of Gulag prisoners. For decades, it existed as a harsh but functional cog in the Soviet machine, mining tin and tungsten from the frozen earth. But empires crumble, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, the economic viability of this isolated outpost vanished. In 1995, the new Russian government made a brutally pragmatic decision. They officially dissolved the town. But they didn't just tell the people to leave. For months before the camera captured those frozen bodies in the truck, the government executed a death sentence on the settlement. They completely severed the town's lifeline. They shut off the central water supply. They cut the gas lines. They terminated the electrical grid and killed the heating systems. The residents, entirely dependent on state infrastructure, were told to evacuate, but they were given virtually no financial assistance, no transportation, and nowhere to go. Siberian winters are not just cold. They are actively hostile to human life. Temperatures plunge to 50 degrees below zero. If you cannot generate heat, you will die. It is a biological certainty. Many residents fled, but the poor, the elderly, the sick, and the stubborn remained in their dark, freezing apartment blocks. The channel owner, the man who presumably filmed this nightmare, confirmed the context in a chilling comment beneath the video. He wrote, "These are corpses that were found in the snow and in cold apartments in the village of Yltyn Chukotka. The heating had been turned off since the fall, and there was no electricity either. And these are people who didn't have time to leave there. Those 3 or 4 bodies in the truck bed were not an anomaly. They were merely the ones they found that day." If you dig deeper into this abandoned YouTube channel, a broader, even more depressing narrative emerges. The uploader was clearly stationed in the settlement during its final, agonizing death throes. He was acting as a rogue documentarian, capturing the final gasps of a society being erased. Another video on the channel shows a town hall meeting. It is a room full of desperate, exhausted residents who had managed to survive the long winter, confronting a government official sent from the capital to finalize their eviction. The audio is heart-wrenching. To older women, their voices thick with panic, cry out, "We'll leave, but where will we live? We spent our whole lives. Here I have a flat. There, I'll be homeless." The government official looks at them with the dead eyes of a bureaucrat. He replies, his voice devoid of a single ounce of empathy, "But that's not my problem to solve. Can't you understand that?" The final video on the channel serves as a terrifying epilogue. The title card reads, "And this is how we all then burned." The footage shows the empty, hollowed-out wooden structures of the village being actively set on fire by the authorities. They were liquidating the town with flame, ensuring that anyone who still refused to leave had absolutely nothing left to cling to. This footage may have been pulled from the deepest trenches of YouTube, but it still haunts the viewer like a ghost. It is a fractured, degraded piece of media that captures a forgotten atrocity. This isn't just a story about a Russian mining town. It is a stark, terrifying reminder of how easily human suffering can simply evaporate from the historical record when the cameras are turned off. It is about the absolute, freezing efficiency of a system that views human lives as numbers on a ledger. And it proves that sometimes, the most vital pieces of our history aren't neatly catalogued in textbooks. They are sitting in digital silence, waiting for a stranger to click play. For our final descent, we move away from the cold brutality of the physical world and turn inward. We move into the microscopic, into the terrifying landscape of the human body. There is a corner of Reddit known as our confession. It is a digital confessional booth where anonymous users drop their masks and expose their darkest, most reprehensible secrets to the void. Over the years, I have sifted through hundreds of these threads. Most are mundane, some more sad. But the post I am about to share with you is different. This confession does not just cross the line into the disturbed. It sprints into the realm of the deeply, dangerously unhinged. It is a story that will make your skin crawl, and it will fundamentally alter the way you look at the stranger standing next to you in a crowded room. If you are currently eating, I highly recommend you pause this audio. Walk away. Finish your meal, because the psychology we are about to explore is stomach-churning. The post was written by an anonymous 25-year-old male. He titled his confession around a simple, terrifying premise. His obsession hurts the people around him. His story begins with a childhood memory. The memory of an itch. When he was a young boy, he contracted a common parasitic infection, pinworms. For most children, this is a mildly uncomfortable, embarrassing rite of passage, quickly cured by a trip to the doctor and a round of oral medication. But for this boy, the sensation of those microscopic organisms moving inside his digestive tract triggered something deeply abnormal in his developing brain. He didn't feel disgust. He felt awe. He wrote, "This event is what sparked my obsession. The thought that my body could be their whole world, their lifeline, almost like a planet of sorts. It was so interesting." This twisted epiphany birthed a lifelong, pathological fixation. He began devouring medical textbooks. He researched the microscopic ecosystem of the human body, fascinated by the fact that we naturally host semiotic mites, like demodex, in our eyenash follicles. But he wanted to push the boundaries. He wanted to know exactly how much biological invasion a human host could endure before suffering catastrophic organ failure. Over the next 10 years, he transformed himself into an amateur parasitologist, but his laboratory was his own flesh. He began to actively, purposely infect himself with non-lethal parasites. He described this not as an experiment, but as a compulsion. A dog, Irresistible urge. He documented his failures. Some strains violently rejected him, resulting in crippling fevers and severe dysentery. But he adapted. At the time he wrote the confession, he claimed his body was a walking, breathing terrarium. He stated he was actively hosting colonies of pinworms, massive intestinal tapeworms, various non-pathogenic protozoa, and body lice. He admitted to being profoundly masochistic. The cramping, the itching, the internal movement, he derived a twisted, psychological pleasure from the discomfort. The biological tax of hosting these massive tapeworms meant his caloric intake had skyrocketed. He boasted that he could gorge himself on enormous amounts of food and remain entirely thin, acting as a bizarre, gluttonous incubate. His home was no better. He kept live cultures of bedbugs and blood-sucking leeches in glass containers, occasionally offering them his own arms to feed upon, describing the creatures with a deeply unsettling affection, calling them cute. But if his obsession ended at his own skin, this would merely be a story of extreme self-harm. It didn't. This brings us to the core of his confession. His fixation evolved. The thrill of being a host was no longer enough. He developed an intense, overwhelming compulsion to colonize, to spread the infection, to turn the people around him into unwitting planets for his microscopic children. And he acted on it. He admitted that while sometimes the transmission was accidental, his family catching pinworms due to his contaminated presence in the home, other times, it was highly calculated, biological warfare. He wrote, "I know it's bad, but I just can't stop. I think I have parasites in my brain that make me feel like I need to spread them. All I know is that it feels good when I do these things." The scale of his invisible terror campaign is staggering. He estimated he had spread his children to thousands of people over the years. He detailed his methods. He would go out into the vibrant, crowded nightlife. He would stand at a loud thumping club, and while people were distracted by the music and the lights, he would casually, quietly sprinkle microscopic tapeworms directly into the drinks of strangers. He recounted a specific, horrifying interaction at one of these clubs. He met a woman. They went home together. He admitted he wasn't physically attracted to her. His entire motivation was to use his body as a vector. He slept with her specifically to gift her a severe pinworm infection. In the process, he contracted pubic lice from her. To his warped mind, he had hit the jackpot. He then took that new strain of lice and intentionally spread it to at least 4 other women he slept with. But perhaps the most terrifying detail was his casual admission regarding public spaces. He confessed to walking into buffet restaurants, places where food sits out in the open, communal air, and secretly dusting the dishes with infectious worm eggs. He anticipated the horror of his readers. He knew society would view him as a monster. "Yes," he wrote, "I understand you think it's gross and messed up. I am basically betraying my species for my children. I don't want to hurt anyone when I do these things, but a force beyond my understanding is driving me to do it. I think I could possibly have a parasite in my brain that's yet to be discovered." He ended his post with a chilling, delusional plea for empathy. He asked that the strangers he had secretly infected would be open-minded. He hoped they wouldn't take the medication to kill the worms. He hoped they would learn to live in harmony with the parasite staring through their intestines, just as he had. "I only want what's best for my children," he concluded, "and if you were truly in my shoes, I'm sure you would do the same." As fundamentally nightmarish as the biology of this confession is, the true horror lies in its absolute, terrifying banality. This isn't a cinematic villain laughing maniacally in a hidden lair. This is a guy at the club. This is the man standing behind you at the salad bar, holding a pair of tongs. This is a person operating flawlessly within the machinery of everyday life, hiding entirely in plain sight. He understands morality. He knows what he is doing is legally unethically repulsive, but his compulsion overrides his humanity. The threat he poses is entirely invisible. You would swallow the drink. You would eat the food. You would never, ever know until weeks later when the agonizing symptoms began. The identity of this anonymous poster remains a complete mystery. The amateur sleuths of Reddit spent weeks staring the thread apart, analyzing his syntax, his medical terminology, trying to ping his IP or locate his city. They found nothing. He evaporated back into the digital ether. Whether this confession was a genuine, terrifying admission of biological terrorism or the elaborate, creative fiction of a bored writer, it illuminates a dark truth. There are subcultures that exist on the fringes of human behavior. There are communities of so-called bug chasers, individuals who actively seek out and distribute infectious diseases, engaging in a twisted economy of gift-giving. We walk through the world surrounded by people wearing carefully constructed masks. We assume the strangers around us operate on the same basic software of empathy and self-preservation. But this confession serves as a cold, skin-crawling reminder. The darkest, most infectious urges do not always stay locked inside the mind. Sometimes they slip out into the physical world. And sometimes they end up in your glass. Thank you for joining me in the dark tonight. If you survived this descent, consider leaving a like on the video. Lock your doors, watch your drinks, and I will see you all again very soon. There is a terrifying fragility to the human experience. We walk through our daily routines wrapped in a comforting illusion of security. We believe that our lives have intrinsic value. We believe that our homes are our impenetrable sanctuaries. We believe that the people we share our beds with are fundamentally safe. But what happens when that illusion shatters? What happens when you realize just how incredibly cheap a human life can be in the eyes of a predator? Today, we are going to explore 3 distinct, deeply unsettling stories. They span across continents, cultures, and the darkest corners of the digital world. They are united by a single, chilling thread, the absolute violation of the human sanctuary. Take a deep breath, knock your doors, and listen closely. Our first descent takes us into the sprawling, sun-baked, and chaotic streets of Lima, Peru. The date was February 21st, 2022. The heavy, humid air of the South American summer hung thick over the city, mixed with the choking scent of exhaust fumes and the endless cacophony of blaring car horns. Navigating through this relentless concrete maze was a man named Leonardo Colli P. Leonardo was a Venezuelan immigrant. He was a father to 3 children, a man who bore the crushing weight of providing for a family in a foreign land. His lifeline was his motorcycle. He worked the grueling, dangerous hours of a moto taxi driver, weaving through gridlocked traffic, hunting for customers, transporting strangers across the sprawling metropolis just to scrape together enough souls to put food on the table. It was a life of profound exhaustion. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the smoggy sky in bruised shades of purple and orange, the clock struck 6. Zaropian. Leonardo was tired. He pulled his motorcycle over and parked on Calle Los Perros, a bustling thoroughfare in the district of Los Olivos. A group of fellow taxi drivers had congregated on the side of the road, leaning against their vehicles, sharing cigarettes and killing time between fares. Leonardo joined them, but the atmosphere was not one of camaraderie. According to witnesses standing nearby, the air quickly grew thick with tension. A heated, aggressive argument erupted between the exhausted father of 3 and another man in the group. Voices were raised. Chests were buffed out. The chaotic ambient noise of Calle Los Perros seemed to fade into the background as the dispute escalated into something visceral and dangerous. After several tense minutes of verbal sparring, something inside Leonardo seemed to break. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't yell back. Instead, a wave of profound, crushing distress washed over his face. He looked utterly defeated. He turned his back on the man, walked heavily over to the concrete curb, and sat down. He stared at the pavement, perhaps contemplating the sheer exhaustion of his existence. The man he had been arguing with did not walk away. He followed Leonardo. But he didn't raise his fists. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his smartphone. He tapped the screen, opening the camera application, and hit record. What happens next is forever immortalized in a piece of digital footage that would soon traumatize the internet. In the video, the camera points down at Leonardo. The father sits on the dirty pavement, looking up into the lens. His eyes are hollow, completely drained of fight. He looks at the man holding the phone, and with a voice heavy with solemn resignation, he utters a single, cryptic phrase. Dila el patron. Tell the boss. From behind the lens, the cameraman's voice sneers back, dripping with cold, mocking disbelief. El patron. He repeats, his tone suggesting, "Oh really? Is that right?" Then the cameraman's free hand enters the frame. He isn't holding a second phone. He is gripping the cold, black steel of a 9-Glock pistol. He points the muzzle directly at the seated father. Without a millimeter of hesitation, without a single flinch, the man pulls the trigger. Glunk, glunk, glunk. 3 deafening explosions rip through the evening air. The 9 rounds tear directly into Leonardo's left temple. The hysterostotic shock of the bullets ripping through his skull is so catastrophically violent that Leonardo's left eye is completely dislodged from its socket. The executioner doesn't stop. Glunk, glunk. A 4th and 5th round are discharged with mechanical precision, slamming into Leonardo's nose and cheek. In a fraction of a second, the father's face is obliterated, reduced to a mask of crimson. His lifeless body slumps over, collapsing heavily onto the unforgiving concrete of the sidewalk. The gunfire stops, but the horror does not. The killer does not immediately run. He stands there, his breathing completely steady, and lingers. He keeps the smartphone camera pointed squarely at Leonardo's ruined face, documenting the carnage. In the final, agonizing seconds of the recording, a sickening, wet gurgling sound echoes from the pavement, the sound of air escaping a shattered respiratory system. In the background, the terrified, piercing shout of a bystander finally shatters the silence. But what is perhaps most disturbing about the immediate aftermath is not just the killer's cold-blooded documentation. As the executioner finally turns and vanishes into the labyrinth of Lima, the onlookers, the people who had just witnessed a man butchered in broad daylight, do not rush forward to apply pressure to his wounds. They do not hold his hand. They pull out their own phones. A crowd inches closer to the bleeding corpse of the father, holding their glowing screens aloft, snapping photographs and recording their own videos of the gore, reducing the end of a human life to a morbid digital spectacle. Who was the man holding the Glock? The police quickly identified the executioner. He was not a disgruntled taxi driver. He was a known, deeply feared cartel extortionist and professional sicario, a hitman named Frank Lopez. In the criminal underworld, Frank operated under a terrifying alias, Motor por Gusto. Kill for pleasure. The motive behind this savage, public execution defies all logic. It wasn't over a rival cartel territory. It wasn't a crime of passion. Leonardo Coley P. was butchered in the street. His children left fatherless, over a debt of exactly 60 Peruvian sols in unpaid toll fees. 60 sols, roughly $16.50 in American currency. That was the absolute, calculated value Frank Lopez placed on a human life. Frank did not film the murder for his own sick entertainment. He filmed it as a marketing tool. Later that very same evening, while Leonardo's family was likely receiving the most devastating news of their lives, Frank was busy sending the snuff film directly to the cell phones of other taxi drivers operating in the Los Olivos district. He attached a simple, terrifying message: "Pay your debts, or this could happen to you." But the internet is a hungry, uncontrollable beast. The footage did not stay contained to the phones of frightened taxi drivers. It leaked. It metastasized. Within days, the horrifying execution video flooded the darkest corners of the web, uploaded to notorious shock sites under titles like El Patron and One Man, 5 bullets. It spread like a digital virus across Spanish-speaking countries. Most sickeningly of all, the clip infiltrated the mobile phones of elementary and high school children, who began airdropping and texting the snuff film to one another as a morbid, traumatizing prank, a grotesque, blood-soaked version of a Rickroll. The police manhunt was intense, and 1 month later, the authorities kicked down a door and dragged Frank Lopez away in handcuffs. He stood trial, and the gavel came down. The judge sentenced the hitman to 17 years and 4 months in a Peruvian penitentiary. If you are thinking that 17 years is an indulgently light sentence for a premeditated, recorded public execution, your blood is right to boil. But the true outrage, the absolute failure of the justice system, runs much deeper. Frank Lopez should never have been standing on Calle Los Paris that evening. 3 years prior, in 2019, Frank had been hunted down and arrested by police for the brutal slaughter of 2 other human beings. During that investigation, detectives found compelling evidence linking him to the unsolved murders of 8 more people. He was a serial butcher. He was caught. But the system blinked. Due to a microscopic clerical error, a maddening technicality botched by the presiding judge, the case fell apart. The system unlocked the cage and released a monster back onto the streets. If the scales of justice had been properly balanced in 2019, Leonardo Coley P. would have driven home to his 3 children on the night of February 21st, and one of the most viscerally horrific POV snuff films in internet history would never have been created. But the torment of the Coley P. family did not end when the blood was washed from the sidewalk. 9 months later, in November of 2022, the digital ghost of Leonardo was resurrected in the most twisted way imaginable. Roughly 187 people, journalists, strangers, and those loosely connected to the case, opened their email inboxes to find a new message. The subject line consisted of a single, unassuming word. When they clicked the email, the main body of text read, "My name is Leonardo Alexander Corey Britoand. This is what I look like on video." Attached to the email was a video file titled California MP4. It was specifically formatted so that it could not be previewed. The recipient was forced to download the file directly to their hard drive to see its contents. Those who hit download and opened the file were subjected to an absolute nightmare. The screen flickered to life, displaying a highly sophisticated, AI-generated deepfake. It was the face of Leonardo Coley P. But it was not his face from life. The creator had taken the sickening, blood-soaked, disfigured image of his face from the execution video, mapped it onto a digital skeleton, and animated it. The mutilated face of the murdered father was forced to lip-sync and smile along to the upbeat pop song California Girls by Katy Perry. It was an act of unfathomable cyber-necromancy, a profound, malicious desecration of the dead. If a horrified recipient attempted to reply to the email, begging the sender to stop, an automated script triggered instantly, firing back any mail containing a high-resolution, static screenshot of the grotesque deepfake fake. The digital manhunt began. Tech-savvy recipients, disgusted by the psychological terrorism, traced the IP address of the Gmail account. They do exec said the creator, exposing the phone numbers, email addresses, and physical location of a man named Jacob. But the rabbit hole went deeper. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Jacob was not the digital butcher who coded the deepfake. He was simply a mercenary. He had been hired by an anonymous third party, paid a fee to act as a proxy and distribute the horrifying emails on someone else's behalf. Before the campaign was shut down, a second wave of emails hit the web. This variation, also titled Hello, carried an even darker message. "My name is Leonardo. I exist." Attached was a file named Leonardo. This was not an AI manipulation. It was a raw, digitally enhanced, zoomed-in cut of the original execution footage, forcing the viewer to stare intimately at the father's ruined corpse. To this day, the true identity of the puppeteer who orchestrated the deepfake campaign remains unknown. They are out there, sitting behind a keyboard, finding amusement in the eternal torment of a murdered man. This brings us to our second story. We move away from the violent physical streets and descend into the quiet, creeping paranoia of the digital landscape. Buried deep beneath the algorithm, hidden in the darkest, most obscure corners of YouTube, exists a channel that you have likely never heard of. It has no flashy banners. It has no introductory trailer. It features absolutely no biographical information. The channel is named Dale Torres. The only identifying marker is an eerie, unsettling profile picture, a shadowy, anonymous figure that perfectly encapsulates the deeply disturbing nature of the content hosted there. If you were to click onto this channel, you would be greeted by a staggering archive. 753 videos. When you click on the first thumbnail, you might be confused. The footage appears incredibly mundane. It is usually filmed from a single, elevated vantage point, the glass pane of an apartment window, looking out over the concrete geometry of a neighboring residential building. At first glance, it is boring. It is quiet. It is the ordinary texture of city life. But, as the seconds tick by, the context shifts. A cold, sinking feeling begins to pool in your stomach. It starts to feel wrong. Every single piece of media on this channel is an act of extreme, calculated voyeurism. The cameraman, Ale Torres, does not point his lens at the sky, or the architecture, or the street traffic. He fixes his camera directly on the lit, glowing windows of the apartments across the street. He zooms in on the people walking on the pavement far below. He is hunting for vulnerability. And he is patient. The cameraman does not just fixate on a single unlucky neighbor. He rotates his gaze. He cycles between multiple different apartments, across multiple different floors. He observes them with such frequency that it becomes terrifyingly clear. He knows their schedules. He knows when they come home. He knows when they leave. Through his high-powered lens, he captures human beings in their most fiercely guarded, private moments. He films a woman mindlessly folding her laundry in her living room. He captures people undressing, changing their clothes in what they believe is the absolute sanctuary of their own bedrooms. He records a solitary figure sitting in the blue glow of a television screen. He watches people obsessively dancing to unheard music. And darker still, he films their pain. He captures heated, venomous arguments between couples who think no one can hear them. He zooms in on individuals weeping in total isolation, their faces buried in their hands. These are moments that no human being would ever knowingly permit a stranger to witness. The channel is not confined entirely to the apartment window. Sometimes the silent watcher takes his camera out into the world. He records unsuspecting targets at sun-drenched beaches, sitting isolated on park benches, or waiting silently at desolate bus stops. The structure of the videos adds to the psychological terror. There is no editing. There are no jump cuts to keep the viewer engaged. There is no added suspenseful music or voice-over narration. There is only the raw, unpolished audio of reality, the low, distant hum of city traffic, the muffled echo of far-off conversations, the ambient noise of a world unaware it is being stalked. Some videos are fleeting, lasting only 5 or 10 seconds. Others are agonizingly long, stretching past the 20-minute mark as the unblinking, sociopathic gaze of Ale Torres simply absorbs the intimate lives of his targets, stealing their privacy to feed his own dark amusement. But what elevates this channel from creepy to truly disturbing is not just the content. It is the audience. The Ale Torres channel is not a viral sensation. It operates in the shadows. Most of the 753 videos barely scrape past 100 views. But there is a dedicated, silent congregation that tunes in. If you scroll down to the comment sections, those sparse, echoing spaces beneath the videos, you will find them. They do not express disgust. They leave cryptic, encouraging remarks. They leave approving emoji. It is a hidden parasitic community of digital voyeurs, feeding off the stolen fragments of other people's lives. Even more alarmingly, investigators who have plunged into the depths of this channel have uncovered comments from users explicitly asking Ale Torres when his next live stream will be. This deeply implies that the YouTube channel is merely a free advertisement, a holding pen. It suggests that Torres streams this non-consensual surveillance live, in real time, on deeper, darker platforms, potentially profiting from the digital stalking of his neighbors. Digital sleuths have attempted to pin down the location of this phantom cameraman. The very first video uploaded to the archive contains environmental clues pointing toward the sweltering, palm-lined streets of Miami, Florida. However, forensic analysis of the license plates visible in dozens of subsequent videos strongly indicates that he currently operates out of Chile. Whether he is a transient ghost moving from city to city, or simply a man who brought his terrifying hobby back home, his unblinking eye remains open. Somewhere right now, a person is standing in their kitchen, believing they are entirely alone, unaware that they are the star of a silent film being broadcast to a gallery of unseen predators. For our final descent, we cross the Pacific Ocean, stepping into the rigid, highly structured, and deeply complex societal framework of Japan. To understand the sheer psychological horror of this final story, you must first understand the invisible walls that surround Japanese domestic life. In this deeply conservative society, the concept of marriage is often treated as an unbreakable contract. Divorce does not merely come with mountains of legal paperwork and bureaucratic headaches. It carries a suffocating, heavy social stigma. It is a mark of profound failure, a stain that can ostracize a person from their community. This burden falls disproportionately on the shoulders of women. Despite modernization, traditional gender roles remain deeply entrenched. Many Japanese women are heavily pressured, or explicitly expected, to abandon their careers and personal ambitions the moment they say "I do." They are expected to transition into the role of full-time housewives, managing the home and raising the children. The dark consequence of this dynamic is absolute financial dependency. When a marriage turns cold, when the love rots away, or worse, when it becomes abusive, these women find themselves trapped. They have no independent income. They have a massive gap in their resumes. An unhappy marriage in the land of the rising sun can rapidly mutate from a partnership into a psychological prison, a form of inescapable indentured servitude. It is within this suffocating pressure cooker of resentment that a terrifying digital sanctuary was born. Welcome to Dana Shinai. Translated into English, the name is blunt, chilling, and leaves no room for misinterpretation. Husband die. The architecture of the website draws heavy, explicit inspiration from the dark corners of Japanese pop culture, specifically the legendary anime Death Note, where writing a person's name in a supernatural notebook guarantees their demise, and Hell Girl, a horror series centering on a cursed website where bullied individuals can type the name of their tormentor to have them dragged directly to hell. Dana Shinai is not fiction. It is a very real, heavily trafficked form. It is a digital wailing mall where anonymous housewives gather under the cloak of night fervently, desperately wish for the physical death of their husbands. These are women who no longer view the vow till death do us part as a romantic promise of longevity. They view it as their only viable exit strategy. The psychology driving the site is deeply rooted in the concept of manifestation. The users genuinely believe that by articulating their hatred, by typing their murderous desires into the void and sharing it with a coven of like-minded women, they are pooling their dark energy. They believe they are willing the Reaper into existence. The website is proud of its morbid mission. The very first thing you see on the homepage is a constantly updating digital death counter, a monthly tally proudly displaying exactly how many husbands have been successfully sent to the big sayonara. Scrolling through the archives of Dana Shinai is like reading the twisted, collective diary of 1,000 trapped souls. You will find thousands upon thousands of highly detailed, deeply personal pleas to the god of death. Some of the grievances are rooted in severe, terrifying trauma, stories of physical abuse, emotional manipulation, and devastating infidelity. But others are chillingly mundane, where years of silent resentment have amplified petty annoyances into a justification for murder. A husband's loud snoring, his refusal to pick up his trash, his chewing sounds, all become capital offenses in the minds of these women. Let me read you a few translations ripped directly from the glowing screens of these desperate wives. Listen to the venom. One user writes, "The reason you're late home from work is because you're having an affair. All you can tell are lies. You're a bastard covered in debt. I get excited every time I hear the sound of an ambulance, but annoyingly you make it home every night. Shinigami, please, take him quickly. Die, you bastard. Delete yourself. Oh wait, you can't get insurance. Then die instantly in a single vehicle accident. Die without causing anyone any trouble." Another post, dripping with absolute contempt. "Haven't you been alive too long? How many more years are you going to make me wait? You rat, perish within a week at the latest. 38 years old and a salary of 200,000 yen. Even our kids in elementary school understand that their dad's no good. They'd be happier if you were dead. Our son says, I'd never kill anyone, but I wish someone would kill my dad. Surely it's not worth living that much. Lol, come on, get crushed by some heavy machinery at work today." And another, breathtaking in its cold calculation. "Your disappearance will make your family happy. Your survival will only bring you trouble. I hope my husband, who has Asperger's syndrome, dies right now. You have ruined my life. Give me back my time. The only thing you can do to make amends, as you have neither the financial means nor a heart, is to expire and let me receive my survivor's pension." And finally, A chilling entry rooted in deep psychological insecurity. I married a poor, ugly guy who was inferior to me, but he got all cocky when I dressed him up in designer clothes, gave him stylish glasses, put him on a diet. And now that he's actually good enough to look at, he's gone out and gathered up some girls to hang out with her husband. Die. When you hear these testaments, it is tempting to rationalize them. You might think, this is just venting. It's an extreme form of therapy. These women are blowing off steam in a culture that demands absolute outward politeness. And for some, that is certainly true. But, as you read further, the illusion of harmless venting shatters. The true motivation driving the core user base of Danashin becomes terrifyingly clear. It is not about justice. It is not about escaping abuse. It is about a morbid, pragmatic fantasy, the absolute freedom provided by a massive life insurance payout. Listen to the cold, undeniable logic of this user. No matter how you look at it, death is the only option. First of all, divorce is out of the question for us. Think about how much we both earn. It's physically and financially impossible to separate. You can't come up with child support, a mortgage, living expenses. So although it may be fine for my mental stability, separation is out of the question. But if you were to die, well, and to make a lot of money that goes to me, my life would be more stable and I could protect our home and family. That is the only option. If you truly want to protect your family as you say, I think there's no other way than this. I don't think you'll be of any use in your mid-50 seconds, complaining about pains here and there. You'll only end up being a nuisance. Personally, I don't need you and there's no reason for you to live in the future. If things go as I want them to, everything will be fine. I'll take care of both of your parents, so you can die in peace. Die will. But a wish is just a wish until it becomes a reality. If you navigate deeper into the architecture of the website, past the main boards, you will discover a section titled The Effect Report. This is where the true darkness of Danashin reveals itself. It is a forum dedicated to updates. It is filled to the brim with celebratory posts from women informing their fellow widow wannabes about their husbands, sudden health scares, near misses in traffic, and new disease diagnoses. They flood the board with effusive thanks to the Grim Reaper, praising the darkness for slowly eroding their spouses' lives. Amidst the endless pages celebrating gout flare-ups and terrifying spikes in blood pressure, a few posts stand out as absolute, bone-chilling testaments to human sociopath Y. One user simply wrote, "Thank you all for your support. I left my note at the end of the year. Thanks to you, I've become a widow. I received a lot of condolences. I'm sorry your husband was still so young," etc. I never say it out loud, but he got what he deserved, so I've come here to express my sincere gratitude. Another updated the community on her morbid success. "It's been a few months since I left my death note and I can't believe it. But my husband really died. The cause of death was heart failure caused by sleep apnea syndrome. He was cold in the morning. I called an ambulance and they confirmed his death at the hospital. To be honest, I'm so happy. So happy. So happy. Thank you so much, Grim Reaper." But the most disturbing entry on the entire platform, a post that paints a picture of absolute psychological horror, was written from the sterile confines of a hospital bathroom. Picture the scene. The bright, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of bleach and antiseptic, and sitting in a bathroom stall, a woman staring at her glowing phone screen, trying to stifle her own manic laughter while her husband lies bleeding in an intensive care unit just down the hall. She writes, "I was overwhelmed with joy when my husband, who I had just spoken ill of in this death note, was in a traffic accident the next day. I've been lurking on this site for a long time, but I refrained from posting because I thought mine was a mild case. A while ago, there was a show about Danashin on TV and I watched it with my husband. Recently, Yahoo News featured an article about the administrator, Makito-san, and my husband said a lot of bad things about him. The next day, my husband went to work in his car and was hit by a truck and taken to a hospital. A terrible accident, they said. He broke his left leg, broke his pelvis, and ruptured some internal organs. He's in a critical condition and hasn't regained consciousness. I'm writing this from the hospital toilet. It's a strange feeling. I thought it would be painful, but I'm happy. What is this happiness? As time passes, my happiness and expectations are overflowing more and more. I hated my husband. He was just trying to act like a good person on the surface, but was filled with hatred himself. I thought by leaving my death note, my husband or caretaker, as he'd say, would somehow find out and become angry. I figured it's the same as saying something bad about the gods at a shrine. Of course I'd be punished, but I'm so happy. Let me say more and more. I'm so happy, so happy. So much fun. Just die. Stay like this, please. I can't show my smiling face in front of my parents-in-law, so I'll laugh a lot now. Here I'm smiling in this bathroom like I've never done before. I'm a weird person, sure. Other people will definitely think I'm weird if they see me. But I'm so happy. I can't stop smiling, laughing. Even I can't stop laughing as I write this. I can try it enough. Thank you. Grim Reaper. My husband is in a serious condition and won't last long, so I will let you all know when he dies. Just thank you so much. On any other corner of the internet, a post detailing the gleeful anticipation of a spouse's bloody demise would be met with overwhelming hostility, disgust, or calls to the authorities. But on the Nishinai, the echo chamber is absolute. The replies to that hospital bathroom confession were universally, terrifyingly supportive. One user chimed in, "I'm jealous. My husband was also involved in a traffic accident and I hope we receive a death notice tomorrow. What great fortune." Another user's reply descended into absolute madness, weaponizing her own children in her hatred. "I wish it were my husband instead of my pet who died today. Even though it's Christmas Eve. He yelled at me in front of our child and left the house, and when he came back, he forced me to obey him. When my husband's around, I want to kill my child and then myself just to hurt him." The replies continued, a chorus of domestic hatred. "Last year when I told mine I was going to the company's year-end party on the 29th, he complained a lot about how it was impossible at that time of year. But then today, on the 30th, he took the trouble to go out drinking with his friends, driving 90 minutes on his motorcycle. I prayed that he'd get crushed in an accident, but he called me to say that he had arrived safely. It's just unfortunate, really. I wonder if a truck will crash into my husband's car. I don't care if it's completely mangled or flattened, though I'd rather he did die in agony. That damn otaku gaming idiot. But if you thought the effect report was the bottom of the rabbit hole, you are wrong. The darkest, most actively malicious sector of the entire website is hidden behind the tab labeled Secret Revenge. This is not a place for wishful thinking. This is a tactical war room. Here, users who have lost their patience with the Grim Reaper share their horrifying, covert methods for accelerating their husbands' deaths. It is a masterclass in slow, untraceable domestic murder. One user details her method of chemical warfare. "I'll continue to cook your meals every day that are a little higher in sugar and salt, so I hope you pass away as soon as possible. I'll be there for you until the end. When you can no longer speak, I'll hold your hand and whisper in your ear. I hated you so much. Whether you're taken by accident or illness, please make sure you listen to my voice in your final moments." Another shares her nutritional assassination strategy, targeting her husband's pre-existing medical conditions. "My husband has dyslipidemia. Even though he's taking medicine, he likes greasy foods and his numbers are not going down. This was my light bulb moment. Now I frequently pour oil on top of my husband's side dishes. The other day when I made him Tianjin rice, I poured some sesame oil on the rice, put an egg on top of it, poured oil on that, poured sauce on it, and no matter how you look at it, it was greasy and inedible. But he ate it saying, 'It's delicious, it's delicious.' He thinks he has a sophisticated palate, the idiot. It's a very modest attack and will probably take a long time, but he's had hepatitis and a fatty liver, so I hope he gets diabetes, liver cancer, or some other disease that insurance will cover. You bold mama's boy." And then, there are the methods designed purely for visceral, degrading punishment. I used to put dirty dishwater in your eye drops, but starting today, I'm changing it to dirty toilet water. Toilet water with toads in before they're flushed in. I'm gonna step up my revenge and send you to hell. So, who built this cathedral of hatred? If you assumed Anashin, I was coded by a deeply embittered, abused housewife seeking solidarity, you would be wrong. The architect of this entire digital ecosystem is a man. His name is Kohiro Makita. Makita does not hide in the shadows. He is not an anonymous specter. He boldly displays his full name and contact information directly on the site. He is fiercely proud of his creation, so much so that he has appeared on mainstream Japanese television programs to defend and discuss the platform. On the site's manifesto, Makita explains his dark philosophy. He claims that he was raised by deeply toxic parents, an upbringing that left his psyche permanently damaged. His worldview is bleak and absolute. If someone is causing you pain, if someone is making you feel trapped, there is absolutely nothing morally wrong with wishing for their total obliteration from the earth. But Makita did not just build a place to wish. He built a manual. At the very bottom of his philosophical explanation, Makita provides a hyperlink. It is a resource for any woman who is tired of waiting for a traffic accident. The link reads, "I wrote about how to kill your husband. Do not misuse. The police won't find out. How to kill your husband quietly and discreetly. How to damage your husband. Kill the people who piss you off. Happiness awaits once you have done so." If you click that link, you are taken to a highly detailed, step-by-step instructional article written by Makita himself. It explicitly outlines how to, in his own words, slowly and casually kill your husband. The guide details the use of specific, easily obtainable, entirely legal chemicals designed to slowly destroy human organs without ever triggering red flags during a standard post-mortem medical examiner's autopsy. It is a literal blueprint for getting away with murder. In recent years, facing media scrutiny, Makita has publicly backpedaled. He claims he regrets publishing the assassination manual and half-heartedly urges his users not to actually follow through with his lethal instructions. Yet, the article remains live. It is still hosted on his servers. The blueprint is still accessible to anyone with an internet connection and a rotting marriage. To this day, Kohiro Makita has faced absolutely zero legal repercussions from the Japanese authorities for facilitating a community of prospective murderers, nor for distributing a tactical guide on how to covertly poison a human being. The site thrives. As of today, there have been over 223,000 individual death notes published on the server. That is 223,000 distinct, detailed wishes for a husband to die in agony. The platform is humming with activity, receiving dozens, sometimes hundreds, of new submissions every single day. It is comforting to close your laptop, shake your head, and write off the vast majority of these posts as harmless dark fantasy. It is easy to label it as a twisted coping mechanism for a stressed society. But when you look at that digital counter on the homepage, tallying the dead month after month, you are forced to ask yourself a terrifying question. Out of those 223,000 women, how many of them stopped wishing and started planning? Thank you for joining me. Be careful out there. Mind who you trust, and I'll see you in the next one.